Hello, hello, welcome, guys. This is season 2, episode 6 of the Own It or Quit It podcast, the career wake up call. Here is Gyongy and Jissan on the line for you. And we are talking about an exciting topic today, which is about an episode of our development topic. You may recall that we have a series of a podcast dedicated to personal development. Last time we talked about the who in your development plan, developmental relationships, which we shared with you that this is giving you probably the 20% of your development experience. And today we are going to talk about the 70%, which is the biggest chunk of your development, which is your actual job. And we gave a slightly provocative question to this episode. And it sounds, see if you like it. Are you growing or just getting older at work? So here we are today. That's what we're going to talk about. And we have a guiding question for us for this episode, which is how can we take the perceived mundane job, our daily responsibilities, and how we can turn them into meaningful learning experiences. And I'm gonna throw at you, Jason, the first question, and then I let you to kind of kick off the conversation. And the question to you will be, how do you determine which of your responsibilities are the most meaningful projects learning experiences?
Yeah. John Jay, it's so good to see you. And again, first of all, we look wonderful because we're both matching
We
today,
color
right? So,
coordinated.
yeah, completely coincidental, but we look awesome. Look, I think this is such a meaningful topic, right? I think for the vast majority of us, our day-to-day job is what makes up most of our time at work. And there's going to be individuals, and I've had this, I mean, with people on my team, is that if you really understand your 70% and you're really feeling like your projects are leading to your development, every day feels fulfilling because no matter what you're working on, you have the context of this is developing me, it's making me better than I was yesterday. But for those that don't have that context or haven't necessarily gone through the process of thinking about their day job as development, it becomes very mundane. It becomes
Mm,
very, I have to go to work. I really like this part of my job, but the vast majority of what I do is transactional. No one really cares if I do it or not. And those little inner voices can be either incredibly motivating or incredibly demoralizing because every day it further feels like you're walking away from your development or you're not, getting anything out of it, right? So I think your question is really interesting is like, how do you make sure that you determine which of your responsibilities are most meaningful? So there's three things that I always tell my team to do. One is have organizational understanding. So, do you understand where leadership is saying the priorities are? Are your managers and the people above you kind of explaining to you how you fit into the bigger picture? Because the first thing is always understanding, yes, you might be doing a simple job. It could be building PowerPoint slides, pulling reports, but who's using that information? What decisions are being made from the information that you're presenting? So, a lot of people, they stop at the job that was asked. So I was asked to create a PowerPoint slide. I created it, I sent it, I move on to the next thing. The learning comes from saying, okay, if I receive this PowerPoint, what decisions am I making? What's the data saying? How should I look at my business differently? And I think a lot of times we reserve that thinking for whoever is senior above us. It's not our job. They're the ones that are going to look at the data. But the moment you start asking those questions, you start to almost steal development from others because you're thinking more about this product or project than anyone else is. So I think understanding that organizational context forces you to ask the right questions. The next one is, I think, storytelling with your manager. So some of the frustration comes from the fact that people feel like they're not seen at work. So they're doing a lot of work. They feel like they're spending a lot of time on, I don't know, let's pick something mundane, invoice approvals and submitting expense reports and these things that feel very transactional. If you're not explaining to your manager what you're getting from it or how you're developing because of the work, both you and your manager will look at it as transactional. One, because you're not explaining what your value, what value you're extracting from it. But also your manager has a lot going on, probably has multiple people that they're leading. They spend time thinking about you, but they do look for you to give them context and to help shape the narrative. So as an individual, we should feel like, okay, if there's three things that my manager did not see me do, but I believe is really important in my development, at my one-on-one, I'm going to make sure to mention it and actually speak about it as a learning opportunity, as a development opportunity that I got. And then I think the last thing is always understand how you're showcasing your natural strengths. So if you feel like you're really good in front of an audience, you can present really well, don't let the project stop at presenting or creating a report and sending it to someone. Ask your manager for the opportunity to present what you pulled together, right? I think a lot of times we assume, once again, because we don't have this senior title, well, why would you present this information? Well, actually, you can tell your manager, I'm the one that collected the data. I know it better than anyone else. I put it together this recommendation. Can I stand in front of a group and actually present it? Because that's the development for myself. So, I think your question about like how do you maximize the work and what you already do, these are like three quick tools or tips that I found to be incredibly helpful. I don't know, any thoughts or builds on those ideas, John?
Yeah, I absolutely love how practical your tools are, and what it tells to me is in through great examples is basically how you bring intentionality to your work, how you put a lens of development on everything, so it doesn't become a separate thing that you only do at certain time of the year when the window in Workday opens and you need to put in a few words about your development, but you actually wear a pair of glasses and you see your entire work through your development. And I think that's probably the way how to grow and not just to get older
Yeah.
at work.
And look, I think the other thing that I always mention to my team is that not everyone's going to take this approach. So if you're the one that really starts to look at your work and really try to extract the development and talk to your manager about it, you're going to stand out because there's not a lot of
Yeah,
people that will take the time to be deliberate and be intentional about how they look
yeah,
at their work. And then all of a sudden you will be seen as someone that sees beyond the
yeah,
project, right? And they connect the dots that others are not doing. So it's always good for your personal brand as
yeah.
well. But I guess the question I
Fantastic.
always have, I always come back to John Jay, and I would love for your perspective on this. What happens when you fail at work? So it's great when you're delivering everything on time, when you're achieving the projects, even if they feel mundane, you're extracting some sort of growth from it. But tell me about times when you find yourself having a perceived failure. How do you make those meaningful learning opportunities?
Yeah. I love this question, and generally I love this topic because um, talents tend to work at highly competitive in highly competitive environment, and when it's all about competition, then failure can be pretty painful. And what you do with that failure is the question. We had in talent management a saying that ego kills talent. And basically what it means that if your only driver is to win, when you lose, all you're gonna do is to try to get out of it, forget it, explain it, but you absolutely lock yourself away from potentially fantastic learnings. So if you're able to manage your ego in those situations and embrace that sometimes you win, sometimes you learn, and then you choose the learning instead of brushing it off, then your failures could be your most precious learning experiences. And also, when you get to an interview situation, those could be your most fantastic examples of learning. People who are comfortable talking about their mistakes, they immediately demonstrate learning agility because the prerequisite of learning is self-reflection, is understanding that I have a space for learning. I'm not perfect. I don't know everything. Those people who don't have that, they're unable to let
Yeah.
any learning in. So this is a little plug for ego kills talent, and another plug. When we were preparing for this session and we were talking about which direction we should take the conversation to, we said that probably we should dedicate an entire episode to talking about learning from mistakes and
Yeah.
failures and what do we do when we fail. So here is a little plug that we plan our next episode to be about exactly about that.
Yeah.
So
And I
what's
think
your view?
it's such a valuable one, right? Because I think there's so much nuance. So if you're early in your career, let's say your first three memorable things are failures. Like you haven't
Mm,
even had a track record of success. Can you really position yourself to say I'm learning from all these failures, or is there a minimum expected success before you start pointing at failures to say I'm
yeah.
learning from them, right? So I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer. I think it really is situational, but you're
Mm,
right. I think we could probably spend half an hour just talking about this one
yeah.
question, right? But I do think it's important when you think about that 70%, not everything's always going to go perfectly.
Mm,
And you cannot say, well, if it didn't go perfectly, I didn't develop. Right. I think
true.
that's a short-sighted way of looking at kind of your work. So yeah, absolutely. We'll probably get into that in a little bit, right? But yeah, it's one of those things where you have to consider both successes and failures as part of your development.
Fantastic. Yeah, absolutely. All right. So we said we're going to come back to this, but I want to move us towards a very pragmatic, practical question, and I'm throwing it at you, is how do you proactively seek actually those projects, those learning experiences? How can you make that happen? Do you need to wait for someone, appointing you into roles, into assigning you to projects? Can you proactively stimulate that? So what's your view on this?
I think there's two parts to it. I think one is you need to be proactive and listening for what people are talking about. So, one of the things that I always consider is like town halls or any of these very large company meetings where you have your most senior leaders talking to your audience. I think for a lot of people, maybe younger in their career, they see that as free time. So everyone's gathered together. There's, 100 people, let's say, sitting together. No one's really focused on you. You're not expected to present anything. It almost feels like, phew, I can just kind of relax, chill out, sit here for the next hour, just kind of listen to what senior leaders are talking about, but almost, I'm planning in my mind the couple of meetings I have after this, and I'm texting with my friends and, cracking a couple of jokes. And I think the vast majority of us fall into that trap. What I've told my team is that if you really want to figure out where the organization is going, is listen to how business strategy is changing or how senior leaders are
Mm,
describing what we need to work on. And then use that filter to say, well, if I look at my list of projects, how many of these projects were applicable to what that senior leader was referring to? You may find out that all of your projects were tied to what was the priority back in January. And now you're in June, and the senior leader is describing some change in the business. Maybe a competitor did something differently, and now we have kind of a new direction. So you should look at your project list and go talk to your manager and say, help me understand, are these still relevant? Or am I working on things that yesterday was important, but not tomorrow? And I think that's a very meaningful question to ask and almost asking your manager to help you think through it. Because if you're early in your career, you probably don't have the experience to be able to answer that yourself. So leverage your manager to ask those tough questions. Now, your manager may say everything you're doing is applicable and therefore, like, you're fine. You can still ask for additional projects. Now,
mhm,
you have to be conscious of workload. So what
mhm,
you can't do is ask for additional volunteer opportunities or additional experiences and then start to not do the projects you were assigned or start to have other things slip. So I think you need to have a lot of self-awareness on whether or not you can take on more responsibility. If you can, what you should do is basically ask for the shiny new projects. Like, how can I get experience on the things that the senior leader was referring to? Maybe there's a new product launch that will be happening in the back half of the year. You're currently not working on it, but you want to shadow someone who is. Or
mhm,
perhaps it's a department that you're not involved in, but you want to find someone that you can watch. Maybe you join a couple of meetings, you listen, you learn. But those are questions you can ask of your manager. No one's ever going to
mhm.
say, we need less people to work on this, right? If anyone volunteers, it usually means they're able to achieve everything that they were asked for. and now they're asking for incremental growth. So I think your manager conversation is incredibly important. The other thing to consider is having a really good understanding of your self strengths and what you're naturally good at, because that can also position you to ask for projects where you know you're going to be successful because it uses a skill that perhaps you haven't been able to showcase with your existing projects. I think the self-awareness of, okay, I have four skills that I'm really proud of and I'm really strong at, but all of my existing job responsibilities only touch two of them. So I have two of these untapped, no one sees it yet. How can I find a project that showcases that? And now you're really being tactical, strategic, deliberate about how you find your next project, and then you're highlighting your skills as a result of it. That's worked for me and my team when I've had similar questions, but I would love for you to give us your perspective. Like, how do you proactively seek out those development opportunities? Like, anything to add, anything you would suggest differently?
Yeah, I echo everything what you said. What made me think is what you said, that be honest with yourself whether you have the bandwidth to take on at all any projects. And it made me think, so what if I have a full-on job? Do I just stop doing development? And that's where I'd like to bring a bit of focus now is. What you can always do is be incredibly strategic about connecting the dots between what you're doing today, even if it's nothing more than what is your job description, but how that thing actually supports the higher agenda, the bigger goal. And we all know the story about the two workers who are carving stone out of big rocks, and one, is being asked, "What are you doing?" "I'm carving a stone piece out of a big rock," and the other one says, "I'm building a cathedral." So you can easily see how, both of them are doing exactly the same thing. They're not even doing an extra project, but one of them does the mental work to connect the dots and really understand how the details of what that work that he's doing is going to contribute
Mhm.
to a bigger, higher purpose and a bigger objective. So that is always with us. And even when you are full on and you can't possibly take on any additional responsibilities, to bring more focus into understanding the correlations and look at that work, no matter how mundane it is, from a strategic perspective, that is already
Mhm.
contributing to your development. What do you think?
No, I think that's spot on, right? And I think it takes a little bit of maturity and also
Mm,
a little bit of confidence in yourself.
mhm,
Because one, you have to know whether or not you have the workload and the ability to take on responsibilities. But if you're one of those high potential people and you feel like you have this desire, you need to also be careful for yourself that you don't lead yourself into burnout. So there can be a lot of excitement and a lot of opportunity that you can take on more projects and more responsibilities. You have to balance that, desire to do more with also, are you taking care of yourself? Are you pacing yourself? And I think very early on, be careful taking on too many additional
mm,
responsibilities because it very quickly you can start to slip on the things that were your day job expectations. And if you find yourself in a situation where you over delivered a bunch of new projects, but then you
yeah,
under delivered your day job,
very good point.
no one's going to see that as progress. They're going to see it as, well, actually, yeah, he did wonderful on these things that we gave him, but he didn't do his basic job. And that's actually how performance is measured, not on the extra
Yeah,
credit.
it
It's on
becomes
the
a bit
actual job.
self-serving, right?
That's right. That's right. And
Yeah.
and you got to think about if other departments are involved in those
Mm,
projects, if you start to slip, will other
mm,
departments start to slip on their milestones? So it is a very big responsibility to take on
mm,
and ask for it, right? But I guess, Johnji, the
mm,
next question I have, there's probably people in our audience that are saying, well, I've asked this before, or I've
mm,
tried, or I've spoken to my manager and I've said I want to work on that project or this thing, but for some reason the experiences aren't coming. So,
mm.
what do you do when you're an associate and you are asking for those opportunities? You're developing and you're doing your day job, but you're just not getting the experiences that you're needing to seek in your current job. What do you do?
Yeah. Well, if you are ambitious and you'd like to progress and you know exactly what is the gap that you want to close with some developmental opportunities or experiences, and you've tried everything and you don't get that opportunity, or you can't carve it out from your current job, or there is practically something like a geographical exposure, or an exposure to a different function or different activities that is needed, and with all the best intention, it cannot be given to you in your current role, then I would really encourage you to be super courageous and strategic and consider stepping outside of the system, even if you want, or if you're a successor for another role within the system. There are such things as called boomerang careers. When people step out, they do complete a learning experience somewhere else where it's more available for them, and they step back and they become the thing they were aspiring to become. So there is no all or nothing in the life of work. You can manage relationships in a way, you can explain a potential departure from the company with a strategic intention to close a developmental gap, and you can contain building a good relationship and say, I want to continue to be on the succession plan, keep me in mind, I'm doing this because I want that, I still want to be that person. And I know not one, not two, actually quite senior careers that were very successfully made this way. So
Mm.
be creative, don't wait. I accept that this requires quite a bit of courage to leave a place that you're where you're embedded. Taking a new job is always comes with its risk. So it also needs to weigh into your ambitions and what you actually want to achieve. But think outside of the box and see whether stepping out of the system is actually the thing that you need to close a development gap.
Can I ask a little bit of a provocative question about
Mm,
boomerang career?
mm,
So again, just for those that haven't heard this before, it's this idea that you've been in an organization for a little while, you decide to leave and go somewhere else, but there may be an opportunity to come back to the
mm,
organization at a higher level because you went out and
mm.
got responsibilities or, an experience that you wouldn't have gotten at your current career. How realistic are boomerang opportunities? Like, because if I really think about it, you need to have someone in the organization that continues to believe in you, that serves as that, connection back. And if that person leaves or if that person changes their mind about you, you do lose that connection back to the organization to boomerang back. And then you're also going to a new organization, but is it wrong in the back of your mind to know that you're trying to go back to your previous organization because you are joining a new company now, right? And they're expecting you to have a flourishing career at their company. So, I'm just curious, like, as you coach
Yeah.
people, like, how do you help them think through this? Because some of it feels like, well, am I doing the wrong thing? Is this deception or is it not? Or what if, the people that I know leave tomorrow? Is my
Yeah.
boomerang gone? I'm curious.
Well, I love this question, and thanks for shedding light on this and challenging me with this. I work with senior leaders these days on their personal development and their career. So I have now the experience when I'm not representing a organization, but I'm supporting a person, and everything in that work taught me that, guys, you own your career, own it. Don't hand over that responsibility to anyone else. If you wait and just wait, and nothing happens to you, nothing more aging than that. That means your life is going to get wasted. Yes, it is a risk. There is a risk in that because you may leave and then you may not be able to return. But there are also opportunities. You may leave and then you may find a new career path. I think where you can't make a mistake with, if you take 100% full ownership about your development and about your career, and you courageously do what it takes to close your development gaps and do the work and trust the process. Trust that, when you invest thoughts and ideas, then you're gonna have the fantastic next step. If you are so if you're really worried about losing those connections, it might be too loud in your head and it might put you in a desperate mode to come back, then don't do it. Do it when you feel relatively relaxed, that you can embrace whatever direction your
Yeah.
career can take. It's going to be beneficial for you. So I would suggest that, do your strategizing, talk to someone about it if it's helpful. Sometimes, that's what my clients do. They talk to me about this because an external voice, an external pair of eyes might be able to challenge you and unlock where the fear is coming from, or where the concerns are coming from. But I'm a big believer of um, own your career. Don't wait for anybody else to make it
Yeah.
happen for you. Do whatever you need to do, and the opportunity may come or may not come. But in that case, at least you can't blame yourself that you've been sitting around and nothing happened to you. So, one thing for sure, if you take courageous steps, then you're gonna come out of that experience with a broader perspective, with new experience, with new knowledge, and your value on the job market will be much higher. I can guarantee that.
Yeah. Well said. Well said.
Yeah, so that's actually bringing us to the end of our session, and I wanted to ask you, um, how should we bring this to home? How do we get this to our ambition, that we unlock this idea of are you growing or just getting older at work?
Look, it's a very I love the question because I do think that when people read that, it's gonna give them a little bit of a wake-up call, which is the job that we have as, hosts of this podcast, right? I think the biggest thing is always you have to take a look at your day job and make sure that you're working on the most meaningful things that really do feel like are developing you. Now, look, even in my job, right? I have mundane tasks
Mm,
that I have to do that does not feel like I'm developing every time I do it. But there's little things that I kind of play with to help me find development. So, for example, even in my career where I am today, if I find myself doing a repeat task, a mundane task, I do think about how do I automate this? How do I
mm,
make this be less, requiring me to spend, let's say, an hour, maybe 2 hours? Is there a way that I can get this down to 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes? So it's not that you don't want to do the mundane tasks. If you're doing them exactly the same way for years, that's on you in terms of
mm,
not finding a better way to do it, right? So I give
mm,
myself little challenges about, okay, the mundane tasks that
mm,
I hate, I'm not going to get rid of them, but I'm going to try to do them more efficiently to free up
mm,
more time to do the fun
mm,
stuff. Then it's about talking to your manager and setting clear expectations around here's the things that I find to be mundane. And if you feel like you're doing more mundane than strategic work, you should talk to your manager about it.
mm,
All that your manager could do, the worst case scenario is your manager says that's your day job. You keep everything exactly the way it is and, let me know when you're done with those day jobs. But the best
yeah.
case scenario could be, okay, well, I'm working on this project. How about you help me with this? Or how about we move this off your plate so that you can have more time for this other project? And you'll be surprised. A lot of managers are willing to do that. They just don't know if you're ready for that. So they may be thinking, well, this person has 10 things already on their list. I need to know if they're doing well on these
Mm,
before I can even give them this.
mm,
So it may be that your manager's waiting for you to ask this question and
mm,
they are in their mind protecting you from workload. So that's why they're not mentioning it. So you're both sitting there hoping that, you move on to more, strategic work, but you're both feeling like, well, there's no permission to do it. So you'll be surprised how much a conversation can open up a lot of
yeah.
doors. And a lot of people realize that they're not having the conversation and it's actually a missed opportunity. And it's as easy as asking. So start there, right? I think that's probably the
Fantastic.
best way.
Yeah. Brilliant. So do we have a homework for our audience?
Yeah, I do think the homework today is you pull up your, kind of your week, your next 2 weeks, and focus on what are the biggest jobs and projects and milestones that are coming up, and how could you approach it differently based on what we talked about today. So maybe you were thinking about delivering a project as an email. Perhaps it's a call and a recommendation that you can speak to because it shows your dynamic personality. It shows how you present. Or perhaps it's, the team asked you to do this analysis, but in your research, you actually found out there's two more important questions. So you're going to proactively do that work for them. So you're
Mm,
thinking two steps ahead. You're realizing that there's an additional question that you assume somebody else will answer. Why not answer it? So I think a simple thing like that, and then preparing for your next one-on-one with your manager and having meaningful questions to kind of challenge, the development. That's it. It's not that hard. But I think all of us are so busy that 15 minutes that we would carve out to do this, we always assume there's no time for it. So that 15
mm.
minutes just gets pushed out for months. But, that's a valuable 15 minutes and you should carve it out for yourself.
Fantastic. So, guys, this is our final message to us today is if you want to grow and not just get older on your job, then do some reflection, do some reality check, see whether real development is happening on your job and have a conversation. You might be surprised.
That's right.
All right, so we're gonna come back shortly on our next episode, where we will unpack failures. So see you there then. Thanks,
See you
Jason. It
then.
was lovely talking to you today.
Good to talk to you as well. Thank
Take
you, everyone.
care. Bye.